go through other states and how did that work?
So part of that happened, and I didn't dig up all the history because I was thinking, man, like when did Berrien County ISD start? I didn't go looking for that. But I know it was 2005 when the first jazz workshop was offered. Amy Spath mentioned that. She's currently still involved in running that workshop. It was, that's the short term for it, the jazz workshop. It's a 1, 2, 3 VC, jazzing up your curriculum with video conferencing. It was a week long. It is a week long. I'm saying was because I'm not in it anymore. It still is a week long or 4 day, sometimes a 4 day, all day workshop, usually offered for 1 or 2 graduate credits for teachers on how to use video conferencing in the curriculum. And I think it was always Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday or Thursday that we would always do an Ask program, and we usually did the book The Wall. And when I was involved in it, we always interviewed one of our local Vietnam vets here in Berrien County. And we had, in the mornings of that workshop, the teachers who were participating in the workshop, they experienced video conferences as if they were students. So they did the Ask program. They had to read the book, write questions, and then interview someone all in the same morning so that they could experience it. Because I think we all know this, right? I mean, we used to say this about video conferencing. Nobody understands it until they experience it. And that's less true now, but it sure was true a long time ago that people just don't get it, right? They have to experience it themselves. So that was a great way to train teachers on how to participate in the Ask program and how to prepare their students.
Thank you.
When we all started this, distance learning in K-12 was low enrollment courses for the most part, where you had 4 kids in this high school wanted to take advanced physics, 4 kids somewhere else in another high school, and so on. And there were some counties around, like Genesee County was heavily involved in it here, and I think Kent ISD, Sue, can you confirm that you were involved with low enrollment courses at some point? Sue Porter?
Yep.
So there was a lot of, thank you, Sue, nice talking to you. Or a lot of pockets around the state that were doing those kinds of things, but at the same time, virtual field trips were starting to come on with museums and zoos and other resources around the country. In those days, we did it through ISDN lines. Everybody's connected now through the internet, through IP connections. But back then, it was all ISDN lines. Jim came to me and said, learned about this program called Ask, and we'd like to try it here. What do you think? So, okay, well, let's give it a try. And we, Sue Porter over at Kent ISD had ISDN lines. We had just deployed a distance learning classroom here in this building. And we brought Chris Burnett's class over to participate with a class over at Kent ISD for the very first Ask program that we did. And I said, wow, we've got a winner here. We have something that really can happen here. And so from there, our internet protocol video conferencing came on, and that was a real fun trip at first, where you really had a hard time keeping the connection made throughout the hour of the program and so on. But we managed to fight it pretty well and got it. And the teachers, to their credit, put up with connects and disconnects and those kinds of things throughout. And Jim, when he was here, was coordinating the Ask program. And back then, in large measure, we would have the authors come to our site. At the same time we were doing this, we were deploying distance learning classrooms in each high school in Macomb County. So the schools in Macomb County that would participate would take their kids over to the high school distance learning classroom, participate from there. But since that time, many schools have their own video conferencing equipment, and of course now we're doing this all through computers and that kind of thing, desktop kinds of things, as the technology evolved. It's been exciting in that when Jim retired, I got to take over coordinating the ASK programs for here in Macomb County. And while he had a nice slate of authors and specialists and books, I said, well, let's see what we can do to expand this. So I would, along with Denise, be looking for different authors and that kind of thing. I'm looking at Dana Lehman, who I met at Clinton Township Art Fair. I happen to live in Clinton Township, and she happened to be there. I walked up to her booth and said, oh, you're an author, huh? So I took her card and went online and did some research about her, and then I sent her an email, explained what the ASK process was, and would you be interested in participating? And about 20 minutes after I sent the email off, I got a response, which basically said, hell yes. I'll be there, okay? And, from there we kept evolving the program. So we're, at our peak here, when I was working here, we were connecting 29,000 students per year in distance learning programs. Probably 95% of those were in ASK programs, which was pretty exciting. And then we got involved with Twice. Twice took it over and offered it statewide first, and then it evolved where we were connecting schools in New Jersey and Texas, and all over the country who participated. And it's still going strong today.
So from there, I'm Denise. I have two mentors here, and this wonderful Dr. Kettel that I've learned so much from. And I tell everyone I'm going, instead of going to work, I go to school every day and I keep learning. And I learned so much by reading these books and having my mentors' support. I still email them once in a while and say help. But I'm very lucky that I've had the leadership that I've had. And they've trained me well, and they molded me into what they wanted, but then I put my own spin on things, and I'm starting to expand in a way, with still keeping the same concept. And now with Dr. Kettel, refreshing everything in me that exactly what the concept is, it brings me back down, it gets me back motivated to do even better. And I think Dr. Kettel just happened to get in touch with me at the right moment at this stage, because sometimes it gets so mundane that you're like, oh man, here we go again, but he refreshed me. Thank you so much. And all of the authors that I've had in, and the specialists, I know Rebecca has, from the Buffalo Sioux, has helped me so much. I just throw an idea at her and she comes up with the program. And for that I'm so thankful, because the students just love your animal programs. And with the authors, thank you for working with me and helping me expand too, because the author specialist knowledge is still the basic concept, but now teachers want more from it. They want more information, more hands-on, more activities, something to make it worth their while, because reading books in school nowadays is just not where it's at anymore. They have to take it a step further to make it worthwhile for the students to learn from it as they read with the new Common Core. And even though I'm not a curriculum person, I have tried so hard to find out and dig deeper as to what the curriculum is for teachers in their ELA programs. With that, I've been working with the MISD consultants, our science, social studies, the English language arts, and some others that have really helped me pull some curriculum together to make it worthwhile. And while I was doing that, I discovered we had authors right here in the building that I had no idea, so we started using them in different programs. So I want to thank you all for your support, and just especially Jim and Arnie and Dr. Kettle. They're why I'm here today, so thank you very much. Okay, at this point, we're going to open it up to a ask Dr. Kettle questions, if you have any. If you do, raise your hand. Anyone?
Well,
We have one. Who do I see?
I'll make a comment if I could. I think what Ray started and what happens in the S program, I think the authenticity that you talked about when you were explaining the program, I think is so important, because so often our students read something and they don't get time to really think about it. They just have a set of questions they need to answer, and they write a book report or whatever the case is, where when they can tie literature in good literature, a lot of our authors have just been outstanding. I don't know the current ones, I'm sure that are outstanding too, but so often with the kids, they can see that this is a real life problem. Monkey Island, they mentioned, we've used that book a lot of times. Our kids deal with that all the time with homelessness, unfortunately. In some of the poor areas around here, or they know people, and it's sort of a hidden kind of existence out there that they can't do. When they have a chance to talk about it, I think gives them some hope that maybe it will work out for them. And I think the books we've done, Chris Crowe's book and the Civil Rights Movement, I had always wanted the kids to do a book about civil rights, and that book has been so much meaning to it, I think, for a lot of our kids, that they could sort of deal with something besides just, oh, we're having African American Week, but we'll look at some people's names, where you get a story behind it and do that. I also have a story from Chris Crowe, when he agreed to be interviewed. I never knew this for a few years afterwards, but and Chris, you can verify this if it's true, you told me anyways, that I was the first person he knew outside his family that read his book. So I just caught him at the right time, and it was a great experience. Since then, we traveled down and followed the whole book through Mississippi, and spent a week in the Mississippi Delta. So it's been an experience for me, and real learning experience. I've learned a lot from Chris, so I really appreciate it. I think that authenticity, to me, is really the key. Giving kids, empowering them to ask real questions. They do a good job.
Okay, we had a question from Mr. John.
Thank you, Dr. Kettle. My question is, what are your expectations of the authors who visit with these students remotely? I just take it offline right now.
That's a good question, because I know Jerry Spinelli, his comment after he was interviewed by the kids using the book Ringer, he said, if you do this again, I'm going to reread my book, because they ask questions that I have to go back and read. Did I write that? And what was I really trying to do? So I guess maybe some of the authors here might want to comment on the kinds of questions they get, which might be saying to the writers, I better be prepared and not just go in there thinking I wrote the book so I know all the answers. So I guess what I would expect is they're going to be good questions. And so with that in mind, be prepared to respond in ways that you might not normally have to share information in.
If I may continue, the questions that I received, they're typically they're repetitive from one group to the other in large part, but you do get someone from time to time who does throw a really good question at you. And I also get questions on where do ideas come from? How do you write a book? How long does it take to write a book? What is your favorite book? So you get questions outside of the general book itself that can be used to extend the joy of reading and writing. So I look at this as an opportunity not only to tell my story, but also to encourage them to enjoy the art and practice of sharing stories in whatever vehicle they choose to, if it's artwork, if it's writing, if it's video, whatever. Everybody has a story to tell, and there are millions, and there are uncountable stories in history that we can draw upon. So I just like to encourage people to share that joy that I have. That's all.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And you also could be responsible for getting kids to become writers someday. I mean, how many people say, I should have written that down, I should have told that story, and how disappointing it is as you get older in life and you wish you knew more about, your own relatives, and they're gone and you'll never get that information. So recording stories when you're young and saving them can be so valuable as you progress in life. And that's one way to do it, encouraging people to, after a good conversation with someone that you really enjoy being with, you might write some reflections on it and keep it. Maybe keeping a diary is not all bad. That could become a memoir. I'm reading a memoir right now, which is Neil Shine's story about his mother. For those who don't know, Neil Shine was a writer for the news. I think he was the editor of the paper. And what's that?
I think it was publisher of the Free Press.
Yes, publisher. So, and anyone with any Irish background would want to read that because probably our own relatives experienced very much what Neil Shine's mother experienced. And to write that, he used so many letters which tell stories. Letters that you keep. That is, when you write a letter, you're recording it at the moment. When you're doing an interview, you're recording it at the moment. And you'll forget it, but you won't when it's written down. You almost will look back and say, did that really happen? Oh my gosh, it did happen. And that's a wonderful way to keep in contact with your roots and who you are and pass it on to generations, future generations. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on screen? I'm sure you're just curious about everything right now. Jamie, you're speechless. I know you've got to have something.
I do. I'm trying to be quiet. I know I can get in the way. To continue on about leaving a journal, I tell my students just about in every program that it's important that they write down their experiences, they write down what their life experience. As a historian, as a historical fiction author, I read diaries and journals to get my ideas for stories and books. And I always tell kids, how many of you want a book written about you? And, of course, everybody raises their hands. And it's like, terrific. Then you've got to write. You've got to leave it in a journal. Don't put it on your computer. They might not have that background or that technology in the future, 100 or 200 years to be able to put it on paper. Write it. Put your feelings and emotions. You see a dead skunk on the side of the road. Just don't walk by it and hold your nose. Go look at it and then write about that experience because it helps everybody in the future know what it was like to be us. And basically what I found the most by doing research that goes back 200 and 300 years is that everybody has been like us. They're the same people that we are, same emotions, same feelings. Technology was different. Electricity, heating, those things are different, but we're all people. And that continuum, I think that's what writing and reading and personal expression, that continuum, that we're all interconnected throughout the ages. And so to be able to put it in books, and your program, to create the Ask program, and Jim and Arnie and Janine to put this together and make it workable, this gives me a chance to work with kids and say, you can do this yourself. You can be this. You can reach out and what is in your heart and put it on paper. And even doing writing programs now with kids online, it's such an incredible thing that you've been able to create. But you've also given all of us an opportunity to be able to reach out and become teachers, and to reach out and touch those kids and help make a difference, help support those teachers who are working so hard in the classroom to make a difference. And, we become resources for them, like the books on their shelves. And through the Ask program, this allows us to do this. I'm just thrilled. I think Ask program is the way to go. And the technology that we have available, it's gotten so much better. I remember struggling with Jim and Arnie and laughing and scratching our heads and all of these different things that we had to deal with. And now I'm in a cabin in northern Michigan. I live in Virginia, for goodness sakes, where my setup is at. I'm in a cabin, and I'm connected with all of you. I kind of have bad lighting, but oh well. So, we're very fortunate that you created this program. You're like our father. You created this program, and we're all here because of you, and this is just so cool to be able to be part of this. Okay, I've talked too much. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
And we're going to go with Chris Crowe now, because I know you're on a limited time this morning.
It's just been interesting to hear the history of what's going on, and I still remember when I got that phone call from Jim, and I didn't even know the book I didn't know if it had been distributed yet, so I'm not sure how he found a copy, but he really was the first person outside my family who'd read the book, and I wasn't even sure how well it'd be received. All you other writers know that sometimes you're just trying to finish the book, and then once it's finished, you hope it might get published, and then if it gets published, you wonder, will anybody ever read it? So it's been nice through the Ask program to connect with kids, and I think what's impressed me the most over the years are the preparation the teachers put into having students be prepared. I think all of us have made school visits where the kids aren't prepared, and it's really not a very productive activity. But in Ask, it's a marvel to me that these kids have questions, they're organized, they know what to expect, and then as was mentioned earlier, the quality of questions, the way it reflects the thinking they've done. I assume it's talking they've done in class where the teachers prepared them to be thinking about what they've read. It's really been an invigorating experience to connect with these young people who have been well prepared and who've been readers and thinkers about what they've been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. And Chris Crowe is the author of Mississippi Trial, 1955. And I know Chris Brennan does this program every year. The one year we did not have it, oh boy, did I hear about that. So we brought that one back. But thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it. We will go with author Brew now. He is the author of The Mudhole and The Snow Car, and he is a teacher in the UP himself.
I have the added bonus of being a classroom teacher. I'm not in the Macomb district, so I don't. My classroom doesn't get to participate in the program, but I get to see both sides of the opportunity, because as an author, I get to interact with the students. A couple of the things that I really enjoy as I see the students work through the questions and things like that is it does cause them to dig deeper into the questions, but sometimes it gives them confidence, and they're working on establishing their communication systems, and you can see their nerves sometimes. Oh, I'm talking with somebody important, and you just get to calm them down and say, no, I'm just a normal person as well as an adult, or as well as the author. But anyway, some of the neat things that I've really seen is my books have been targeted more towards reluctant reader boys, and that's kind of the target audience that I really try to pursue. But to watch some of those kids, just all of a sudden it connects with them, and they used to say, I hated reading, but now I really enjoy it, and maybe someday I'll be an author too. So some of those, just getting to see the reactions of the students, and as has already been mentioned by a few of the other speakers, just getting the students, as I'm watching them, they're digging into the story and asking questions, And it's been fun when they've stumped me. They'll ask me a question about my story. It's like, I had never really thought about it from that angle. So you know that they're really getting into deeper thinking. And that's one of my favorite parts of, I shouldn't say that, but it is one of my favorite parts is when they stump me, because all of the other answers I've read through, I've written my story, I've prepared it, and then all of a sudden they stump me. And the kids, when they realize that they've stumped the author on his own story, just is a kind of a unique experience for them as well. But the program has been wonderful to be able to reach students. Again, I live in a very rural area. And being a teacher, I can't necessarily leave my classroom very often, so to travel to other schools. So this has been a wonderful program that I've been able to, from my hometown, just be able to share with other students across the state. So thank you for providing the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now Sherry Hollway. She's a children's author, and we use her mainly for our Twice program.
Good morning. I hope we don't get a lot of feedback. Whoops. I don't know if I'm on. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because last time I had a lot of feedback. I apologize for that. I have only been involved with the Twice Asked program for about 6-7 years now, but I was thrilled when I got a phone call asking if I would be interested in participating, and my first experience was going up to Berrien Springs, where Janine was in charge, and she was such a great mentor for me, teaching me how to speak with the children and how to answer the questions and taking time and the feedback that would happen back then. And now to have the opportunity to do it out of my office, which I think is fabulous. I'm sure the other authors feel the same way, because the students get so excited when they see where you work. And I often tell them, well, this is where I kind of put it together, but I work outside of my office. I get my ideas when I'm out anywhere. I've always told them that it is important to write down your ideas when you think of them when it comes to you, because every author will know that how many times we've all said, oh, I'm going to remember those words. I will do that when I get home or whatever. And in a matter of seconds, when your mind gets distracted, you lose that important word that you had in your mind, or that important sentence. And I said, I now speak into my phone when that happens, but I often tell them, you don't need a computer. I know we're in the technology age, but I'm a big advocate of pencil and paper. And I said, I write everything down. All my stories are done on pencil and paper. I said, and you have those tools that you can do that with. I said, and so take advantage of that. Every time an idea pops in your head and you think about it, if you have the time, write it down. I said, because you never know when you're going to put that all together. I have an ongoing file where I have what I call my exciting words that I hear that I think of, that just one single word will draw a picture in my head. Like my granddaughter's, one of her favorite words is scrumptious. And I'm like, oh, that's a good word. And I'll write that down, because those are just interesting words that when you hear them, they form a picture in your head. And so I get excited that the Twice Asked program has given me the opportunity to talk to students and get them excited about not only reading, but writing themselves. And I think that's important. And I always say to them that I think somewhere along the years, I have had the opportunity to speak to someone who is definitely going to be a writer as well. And I can't wait to hear them speak or see their story. So thank you. And I can't wait to see where the Twice Asked program is going. I realize that because I do picture books and just started in the juvenile chapter area, I still have a lot to learn, and I want to be able to bring my picture books not just to life, but to be able to connect them with the Common Core program and get them excited about things that are in my story, not just enjoy the book. I do think it's very important for a child, especially with picture books, to get excited and create colorful books that want them to open up the book and go from page to page. And writing in lyrical rhyme was my thing, to get students excited about being able to read and feel the wonderful encouragement and satisfaction of being able to turn that page and go on, because I had a granddaughter that would get frustrated with reading. She would get lost or couldn't understand the word, and she didn't get that satisfaction of turning that page, and she would get frustrated and just put the book down. And I didn't want that for her. So that's what I always wanted to write, but the opportunity didn't happen until later in life for me. So I tell people all the time, never say never and keep your dream alive, because you don't know when the opportunity will happen. So thank you, Twice Asked program, for giving me that opportunity. I greatly appreciate it. I'm so excited to see all these people. I've seen your names and I've gotten emails from you, and there you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. It certainly is nice having you here and being able to chat with you and see you too in person. Thank you.
And Denise, Chris Crowe here. I'm going to sign off, but I just want to thank everyone too. It's a terrific program, and I wish you all the best as you continue.
Well, thank you, Chris, very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, you guys.
Thank you. Bye. We are going to now go with our specialist, and I'm sure she has a whole different thought process on this. Rebecca Balk from the Buffalo Zoo. Welcome.
Thank you. So yes, as being a specialist, or so-called specialist, instead of the author, it is a different experience. So over the years, the program content that I've been able to offer has definitely changed. So I'm the person that the students will ask questions about animals to, and we started out just by being able to incorporate various what we call biofacts, different items that the students could see on screen. And the exciting thing for us over the years is to incorporate more live footage, so that when a student in an Ask program or just a general virtual field trip connecting with us here at the Buffalo Zoo are able to see animals live and see what they're up to, and incorporate that into the programming for them. So I'll just take you over right now very quickly, just to kind of give you an idea of something that we're able to show the students during a program. So we focus typically, depending on the content for the students, on Arctic animals. And so I have an Arctic fox who's hanging out right over here. And to incorporate that footage really is, exciting for the students to know what's happening live with the animals here at the zoo. It is tricky at times having questions that the students are preparing and me not really quite knowing exactly what animal they're going to be questioning about, or that kind of thing. So it's always on the spot, ad-libbing, and trying to incorporate appropriate biofacts or animals at the time that they're asking questions. So that's sometimes the challenging thing, but it is really exciting to have the students so well prepared and to have the questions that they're excited to ask about. And sometimes they'll even have projects or research that they've done on particular species, and they showcase those items to me before they ask a question, or to hear letters and comments from the students afterwards about what their favorite animal is, and something new that they learned about a species. And that's the goal that we have here in the education department at the zoo, is that we want students to connect with nature, to connect with animals, to care about conservation, and to have the students excited to see animals in this way is exciting for us here at the zoo as well.
I have a question. So you're given a book to read, is that correct? So you'll read a book?
But that's what I wanted to mention. I get the teachers, she does 3 different programs with us. In the winter, we have a book called Animals in Winter. And she does a program on animal habitats for the winter. And then she does a polar bear program in February. And then on June 1st, and yes, I broke the rule, I went past Memorial Day with having Ask program. I was told never do that. So on June 1st, and it's Bill, she does a summer animal habitat. So go ahead, finish.
Yeah,
So
so
she
that's,
does-
so even a novel, I mean, do you have wolves at your zoo?
We do not have wolves. We
Okay.
have an animal relative, a maned wolf, which is not the gray wolf. It's a different taxonomic
I was
group.
thinking of the classic Julia the Wolves, for example. And we have done that where somebody brought not necessarily a wolf, but a dog. Of course, all dogs can be traced back to wolves, but this was a closer trace on the chain. And I just wondered, so can you, do you remember some of the books that you had that you were asked to read?
Yes, actually, I have two of them here. Ice Bear and Little Fox by Jonathan London, A Polar Bear Journey by Debbie Miller, and A Cool Summer Tale. And Denise, it's the...
Animals, winter habitat for animals or something like that.
yeah.
I know.
Yes.
Good. I mean, that I think is, I mean, see, it's good for you because you're getting an idea what kids are reading, and it's certainly good for the children who will certainly get a lot more out of their reading than just sticking with the book.
But these books are more informational.
And that's great, you know, because we do,
They're not novels.
there's a book called Mail by the Pail. It's not about animals, it's about freighters. And so to take this to information books, and that's actually how the very first interview that I did with students was information from a newspaper. So there you go.
Right, and part of what we do here at the zoo also is conduct virtual field trips. So the Ask program is a very different format compared to those which are more presentation style. We do, with the virtual field trips, incorporate a lot of questions. So we'll ask students ask them questions during a virtual field trip, and then provide information, provide biofacts and live cams, and incorporate lots of different media in the program, and leave time at the end for them to ask questions that they've come up with during the virtual field trip. So that's a very different format from the Ask format, in which, yes, they're engaged in a particular book of focus, they come up with their questions, and it is that interview style that is more one-on-one with the students, and having that connection with them is more engaging in that way. So it's a really nice change, and we look forward to those connections every year.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we are going to come to our audience, and we're going to go straight to our other specialist we have, Harlan Anwar, and she does a novel called The Breadwinner.
When I started this book, actually when this book was given to me by Mr. Montreux, I was so excited when I started reading this book. I couldn't stop. I finished in 2 hours or so. Everything was like a picture to go through my mind. And I didn't stop. I read a couple times. Then I saw this book doesn't have any pictures. When the students read, it's better for them to visualize things. So I provided pictures related to the book. And as I do the program, I show also the pictures. This is how Afghanistan was before the war and during the war, and also these pictures, how the people did these things that you're reading about. And I bring materials like burqa. They tried on, they experienced. We used to have audience in our program, but we don't anymore. But if I go to the schools, I've done that too in a couple of schools that I went. Then they try on the burqa and they taste the bread. I bring the bread, this called naan. So I have, not only they read the book, I tell you a story last year around maybe September or October, one of the college students called me and said, can I interview you for my paper because of your experience in your escape from Afghanistan. So I said, sure, why not? So many students have done that. So I said, maybe this is another one. As we were talking about my story and my experience, somehow came about my work and what I am doing at ISD as a bilingual tutor and also cultural presenter for schools and the state. So the talk came about this program, and I told her the name of the book. I said, oh wow, I read this book in 5th grade. That was you? I said, yeah, that was me. So Esther, I get goosebumps now. She was so excited. She said, I still remember the story. I still remember the question. This is the book that I still is in my mind. So this program works. Congratulations and thank you for doing this, and thank you for having me in this program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely, thank you. 'Cause I know it's really tough for some specialists to dig in their past and bring out that history, and whether good or bad,
Yes,
it's always an emotional day.
every time I do this program for a couple of days or sometimes for a week, I'm back in Afghanistan in war zone. It hurts, but when I see the letters from the students, the thank you cards, it makes me grateful to do this.
You know, it's interesting to say that, because Jack Wing often said when he, Holocaust survivor, when he come in and tell the story that for 2 nights ahead of time, you'd be thinking about it and couldn't sleep and think,
Right.
just anxious.
Just before and after.
All
And,
those experiences and memories again, too.
Right.
Yeah, we had the same reaction from the specialists we use for the wall. Combat.
44, and it still happens every year.
Every year.
Back one.
About 2 days before the program and 4 days afterwards, he's suffering. You know,
But it still makes me, another hand, makes me grateful for what I have today. You know, it's what I accomplished, or my kids, and I'm not in that situation anymore. So it makes me also grateful.
Here to talk
Yes.
about it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I think it's wonderful that you open the students' eyes to what's really happening.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
And we have a twice author with us today, Denise Brennan Nelson, and I love her name.
We sometimes get our
emails
emails.
Yes.
She sent me a couple emails saying, I think this was meant for you. You know, I am just taking this all in. I appreciate and you know, so much of what the other authors have said, the other specialists, is how I feel about this program. I guess my biggest question is, and you brought it up when you introduced yourself, but it's really for the educators, and that is what, and you've talked about this, Denise, that they're asking for more hands-on, and in a personal school visit, you know, you can give a lot of that. And I love, you know, just sticking to questions with one of my books. That's wonderful, and I'm often stumped by some of the questions, which I love. But I also feel like if that's what they want, so I'm asking you and the other educators.
We're gonna let the educators talk when the
Okay.
authors are done, and let them give their
Okay.
input, because I'm very curious myself.
Okay, of what they want from
Yes.
us when we're there on the screen, and you know, trying to reach through the screen and really get these kids engaged and inspired, and you know, I would love to hear more from Dr. Kettel about curiosity. You obviously have an amazing curiosity, and I just think it's awesome, and it's something that not to be negative, but I do feel is lacking a little bit in some of the questions. The repetitiveness of the same old questions over and over. So when you do get that question that just like, you know, I'm taken aback. I'm like, yes.
Do you have a husband?
Right.
What do you do?
Right. And I'm not saying those are bad questions.
Yeah.
But getting my own kids to ask questions. You know, you say, does anybody have a question? And you know, I was at first reluctant to pour out all the questions that I have. So I get that it's something we need to all get better at.
Yes, and children will only get better if they hear good questions.
Yes, that is so
If you
true.
hear the mundane,
Yes,
guess what?
right.
And so, to kind of direct more questions to people. So some kids are very good at this. And I think they ask good questions because they're thinking. And to think, you have to be interested. And to be interested, you have to understand. If kids don't understand, they don't get it. They're not going to ask good questions. So they're going to resort to, the superficial. One wonderful thing about books in the form of stories is the story. We love stories. Who does not like a good story? And so that's a good way to start, right? With books that tell stories that kids can identify with. And I think sometimes they just, we call it scaffolding, you can call it anything you want. When the information isn't there, you've got to build it, provide it. So maybe that's what teachers are asking. I don't know. I'm with you. I'd like to know what educators are, the hands-on, what is this? So.
Yeah, the activities. Again, there's a lot of things that when I visit a school, I take a journal, lots of journals, but I have one that my grandma started in 1932, and so I hold that up, and you can immediately see how old it is, and of course I've got it bound up, and I probably shouldn't even be taking it with me. But they immediately like, oh, and you tell them that grandma wrote about dinner and what she did on Sundays and buying a car, and it's in her handwriting, and it's it's just a beautiful thing. So it's a great way. So those visuals, I think, are really important.
Yeah, yes.
So yes. So.
Well, that's why I don't know if our video people can see, but on the walls I have posters. I make a visual for every book I have. I know, I'm not sure if you can see it really well, but on every subject, teachers get a poster with the book about the subjects in the book that they need to focus on, that just brings out the texture of the book, I guess you'd say. I don't know, I lost the right word, but it just brings it alive, basically.
Well, it's kind of like the setting. If you like a book and you find out the setting is in your neighborhood, oh my gosh, what do? They're making a movie down the street? I got to be there to see this. Or for me, it was Willow Run. I have to go to Willow Run and see what's left of this plant. You know how big the plant was to build a B-24? 1 mile by a quarter of a mile. Can you imagine a building that is 1 mile long by a quarter of a mile? Wouldn't you just want to go and see this? Of course, it's no longer there, but now they have, I think it's called the Yankee Museum. But that's why we have museums, and whether it's a war museum or the zoo, you want to see. So to make it real, I think, yes, that's what we want to do, make it real in any way we can.
Right. I use a lot of trainers of time and journey back to lumberjack camp, tied out to Michigan, and we pretty much change our classroom into that time frame, and the kids really get into learning about that. And I always hear parents saying that their children want to go, and explore Michigan and see these spots. So I think it's really important to get their interest or curiosity of what's going on.
It reminds me, there is an author, Gloria Whalen.
Oh, yeah.
And she wrote a book called Homeless Bird that takes place in India. And when she wrote this book, she wrote it at her cottage in the Traverse City area, I believe. And she has a room that is everything was India in that room. There were pictures, maps, and she's never been to India. And anyone who reads that book, the first thing they will say, how long were you in India? And they cannot believe, even the folks who have read it, that were born in India, have a hard time well, how could you not have been to India when you have described it in this way? So the authors that write often become entrenched in a physical part of the world where they've never been before, and Gloria needs to do this. And by the way, she won the National Gold Medal, National Book Award for Homeless Bird, which is the setting is Vrindavan, which is, if you've ever been to the Taj Mahal, on the way to the Taj Mahal is the city of Vrindavan, and that's where a good part of the story takes place.
Thank you for that. It's very interesting.
I think, we were talking about visuals, and I always bring I explain the writing publishing process. So I bring, I made like a dummy book when I first started, as they call it, where before it was edited, anything, I could see what the book looked like. Mine are picture books. So I think when I get the letters back from students, I'll get a lot of comments from teachers saying, I like that you explain the writing and publishing process, that they can see that the same process that we use is what they're doing in the classroom. So it's a good idea because they like that visual stuff, to look at your book and say, this was my first cover, but I didn't really like it when I decided to have it published, so I changed it to this cover. And then I'll ask them questions, they're not gonna hurt my feelings, which cover do you like better? And they'll raise their hand. It shows them and gets them a little bit more interested, but for visual. But I love the program, and when I wrote my first book, I really wanted to
This is Dana
make a
Lehman,
difference.
she does children's books.
My first book was about teasing and treating others the way you wanted to be treated. And I really never intended on publishing it. It was a gift for my kids for Christmas. My mother-in-law is an illustrator, and she's been an illustrator for she's actually an artist for 40 years. But I asked her to do illustrations, and she said that she would love to. So we made a dummy book, and I had it done in Staples. It was spiral bound, and it was a gift for my kids for Christmas. And I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and said, you need to go to schools and talk about teasing and treating others the way they want to be treated. And so I did that, and I loved it. And I decided to self-publish, where I hired everybody that I needed. And it's been a wonderful journey doing it. And I love to be able to share it with students. And I just wanted to make a difference. And your program has allowed, I think, all authors to expand your audience. And it's exciting when I go places and students will come up to me and say, I interviewed you last year, And I still remember one show of a little girl, she was probably in 3rd grade, and she said, I'm gonna ask my teacher if we can do that program again next year. And we stood there talking for probably about 10 minutes. Her grandma was pulling her away from my table. And another vendor came up the next day and said, that has to feel absolutely amazing to be able to inspire children like that. I seen you talking to her, yesterday. So it's been an amazing experience, so thank you.
Stepped out and asked me to take over. How experienced I am at this. One of the things that in the Ask process, about 112 years ago, when Chris was 2, we produced a videotape on the Ask program, which turned out to be probably the biggest distributed videotape. In fact, I think Denise still has copies of it. Yeah, well, some of the kids that were in that classroom are probably grandparents now.
Right.
But, and explains the whole Ask process, and Chris modeled how to do the Ask process with your students and so on. One of the things that we always encouraged, Jim started it, was have the students develop thank you notes to send to the author. One of the books that we did with the author at the time, Meal by the Pail, Colin Burgell, we still do it, but we use the captain of the Westcott now. Colin decided he didn't want to do it anymore. And I remember Ann Scorpa's class participated one year, and Colin mentioned that he really liked it when they got pizza on the boat.
Yeah.
And so, the thank you notes came from her classroom in a pizza box, shaped in
Pictures of that.
pizza square.
Yeah, that's clever. That's great.
And that was the student, we always talk about what kind of thank you notes we're going to send, and they came up with that. It's just a lovely
Well, he
thing.
got a huge kick out of it, because he sent us both, Denise and I, emails thanking us and mentioned that particularly.
Okay, now we are going to hear from our power teachers. I can't thank you enough for taking time to be here today because I really wanted more teachers here, but when school is starting soon, I know it's crunch time, so thank you for taking time to be here. And you're on the spotlight because you're why we're here, so thank you so much. We have Ann Soroka, she's from Anchor Bay, Great Oaks.
Great.
Lisa Wisdom from Fitzgerald. And Danielle, she actually took over Dr. Kettle's job at the U of M.
And is doing an outstanding job, I'm telling you.
Thank you for being
I
here.
hear only wonderful things. And she's got me working already, but she's doing 98% of it. So we're doing an article, Danielle's doing an article on plagiarism, on something that's totally different from this, but is exciting. And here she is typing everything that we're saying.
Want a copy?
No, I don't want a copy, but I'm sure she's going to use it.
So we will, Ann Soroka, if you can go ahead and give us your input.
Well, this is a fantastic program. I first started with the LAPS program, the DNR, and that was fantastic. And I had noticed that one of the other teachers was doing the ASK program. And so the first one I did was Journey Back to Lumberjack Camp. And that was fantastic. It tied right into our curriculum, and the kids just enjoy it. And when the first interview, I just laughed so hard. Janie is very animated. And the
Watch
students,
it.
they were just so happy and just felt comfortable doing the program, and it was great. And so then now I find that I don't have enough time to do all the programs that I want to do through the ASK program. I do find though lately that, and maybe it's just the time aspect, but my students aren't doing the deep thinking. They're just doing the quick questions, and then I have to really get them to think about it. I appreciate the emails that you sent with the first questions that you had. I will definitely will be using that to try to get them to think deeper into the books.
But it depends too on the book, right?
Right.
I mean, if you're doing Mail by the Pail is a good example. You know, Colin Frigel is he's a pilot, so he drives the Great Lakes Freighter. And I don't know about you, but I'm always interested when a freighter goes by. And if it's close, I want to see the whole boat go by.
Right.
And you could read about what it would be like to be on a boat for weeks, months at a time. But it's a little different than The Breadwinner, a story of survival. So, I think you have to, and if you have thoughtful questions that aren't necessarily, thought-provoking, but they're interesting and appropriate questions, and you're having a book that's informational, that doesn't require to give your life, you may not, it's just a different kind of experience. So I think you have to keep that in mind.
Right. And they enjoy every one of them. I think, Jane.
Yeah, excuse me if I can add also, as authors, and I've been doing this for so long, and I'm comfortable with the kids asking questions, we kind of identify the rote questions, the ones that we've heard 9 million times over and over. And when you're getting a classroom that you're getting a lot of those questions from, I kind of shake it up a little bit. I start asking them questions to try to bring out ideas from them so I can elaborate on some of the different points that are in